Hi, Sue Hall and Tristan MacDonald here in our third series of podcasts, December 2020. We're focusing on the gift we all share, the ability to alter perception. And today, Alison Edgar has kindly agreed to join us. Alison is called the Godmother of Entrepreneurs, and of course, she has the gift of dyslexia. Now, her name appeared in my email quite by chance a few weeks ago, and I'm really looking forward to meeting her alongside all you listeners. So, Alison, how did you manage to acquire that wonderful title?
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Tristan, for having me. So my background originally was in sales. So I worked for big organisations in corporate sales. And I realised at that time that a lot of small business owners don't know how to sell. So I took it upon myself to teach small businesses, because if they don't sell, they don't have a business. Mm-hmm. But I get quite involved with people and their businesses and what's going on. And one of my clients who makes gin, he's the naughtiest boy that I've ever met in my life. So I absolutely adore him, but he's so naughty. I said, I need a name, like a brand name. And he said, oh, Alison, that is so easy. You are the entrepreneur's godmother. Oh. And I looked at what godmother means. It's somebody who's influential in someone else's life. And of course, I'm really influential in people's businesses. So it's so sweet. And it wasn't self-named. It was named by one of my clients. So that's why I'm the entrepreneur's godmother.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so as you know, our viewpoint on dyslexia is that we have this beautiful ability. If you were to close your eyes and imagine something, it would be three-dimensional, and you would be able to keep that object still, and you would be able to see it from all angles in your mind. It's not solely visual. Sometimes people can hear things differently, and even touch can be affected. That sort of translates into empathy. So when did you realize that you had this gift? Or maybe you didn't think it was a gift at first?
It's really interesting, the word that you use there, regarding the three-dimensional side of things. And I've never heard it described like that, so I'm really fascinated by that. I went to primary school in the late 70s, early 80s. Again, as the listeners will know, and as you know, it was never really recognised particularly well. So I went through the generation that because I really struggled to read and write, people didn't see the gift. And because people didn't see it as a gift, I saw it as a weakness originally, that I thought I was a bit thick, I was a bit slow. And again, it wasn't picked up by the education system. So it wasn't until later in life that I realised there was something slightly different in the way that I think and the way I do things. But I think one thing that I really cottoned on to at the start, and again, I think this is a really important thing for your listeners, was that, and again, you touched on it there, empathy in people. I am great with people. I love people. And I knew from an early age, it was quite good to compartmentalise the things that I was really good at, and then look for coping strategies for the things that I wasn't so good at. So I left school when I was 16 with no qualifications. That's a slight fib there, Sue. I've actually got a C for arithmetic, so I'm quite good at the counting. It's just the words and the reading and writing are horrific. So I think for me, I never let it hold me back. I think that's, again, the point to the listeners, that I never, ever, I really focused on the things which I was great at. So when I was 16, I left school and I became a hotel receptionist, right? Because again, I'm really good with people. I'm patient with them. I really like them. I'm good at organising things. And I thought hotel receptionists just gave out keys. I know it's slightly naive, but I could do that. I knew that was a strength, but really good at giving out keys. But what I didn't realise was, because it was a small family-run hotel, that we had to do everything. So every piece of cash that came through the company went through me, the credit cards. I emceed weddings when I was 17. I could run food and beverage. I could run the door at the nightclub. So all these things that you don't get taught at school, actually my strengths really started to flourish from a really early age. And a lot of people without our gift would have struggled to stand up in front of a room and hold the gavel and bring in a bride and groom, whereas I really found my strengths early doors. And I wasn't actually diagnosed as dyslexic till I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I think it felt like, hallelujah, hallelujah. I've discovered why. This is why I do things the way that I do them. I'm not thick. I just can't see in the same way that other people do. So I think that's the important thing. There's like really focusing on the things you're really good at. And empathy is one of the things I can pick up empathy quickly. And so emotional intelligence has helped me throughout my career and in the business. And that feeds in really to the godmother, doesn't it? That links in. I would never be the godmother if I didn't have the empathy skills, and I wouldn't have the empathy skills without the gift.
Exactly. And it's interesting that you say about organizing, because I can organize. It's like putting things in order. And typically that's something that not every dyslexic is good at, which I find interesting, because I've noticed that people have characteristics, and there's a characteristic that when they're good at, a talent evolves, and then there's a characteristic that they're not good at, a challenge evolves, right? And it's very interesting how we all share this gift of being able to alter our perception, but the actual way it manifests is so different. Your reading and writing, not so good. Your math, better. I was the other way around. I could read and write, but my math was atrocious.
Yeah, I mean, my sons are both dyslexic. They both have the gift. And I had to push the education system, because I think as a dyslexic yourself, you can see the traits in your children. So I was saying to the school, look, these my dogs are dyslexic. I know they are, because they can't retain the information, they can't remember. And it's interesting. So the youngest one, he's just gone off to university in Bournemouth in England, which you know very well. And he's just had his test, and he's in the 90th percentile for problem solving. So his problem solving is at like 90%.
Yeah.
But reading and writing, he's in the 14th percentile. So, you know, you look at that, it's a big disparity, isn't it?
Well, it makes sense that he's in that 90 percentile for problem solving, because I find a lot of dyslexics are very, very good at problem solving, because they've had the struggle at such a young age, where if you go to school and you struggle through a lot of it and the school doesn't recognize that you have dyslexia, you're going to figure out ways to either get out of doing something or doing it the easiest way that you can think of. And organizing, to me, I always thought, if you were a dyslexic, you'd be really good at organizing, because it's all visual. There's nothing about it that's really written.
So I tell you what's really interesting with that, Tristan, is I run a company, I run my own company, and I get very easily distracted. You know, I could be doing one thing, and I always employ people who are really good at bringing me back into focus. So I'd say that I've had two main challenges. And one was writing a book. So as a dyslexic, to write a book was horrific. But again, I knew that I needed help. Does that make sense? And I think that's a strength in itself, to say, look, I need help with this. A lot of people try and hide it or bury it away or pretend it's not there, or even worse, say, I can't do that. I can't write a book because I'm dyslexic. And, you know, I know how tough that is, because I waved that card for years. And it was only when I thought, well, you know, I talk about goal setting, I talk about achievement, and I believe to say I can't, I think that's a positive. A lot of people say that's a negative. I think it's a positive, because if you think you can't do it, it gives you a place to start from, doesn't it? So when I wrote the book, Kaya worked for me, and she really helped me bring that focus back, because I'd rather have been doing anything else than write. I don't enjoy it, you know? So I think it was that focus. The reason that I wrote the book, and again, I believe this is one of the things that helps us keep on track, is why we're writing it. That's what focuses you back in. So if you think, well, why I'm doing this is for this, that will make you focus. That's what I found with me. So the reason I wrote the book was, there used to be government funding for me to teach businesses, but when government pulled the funding, the people who needed me most, the startups, the micro businesses, they didn't have any money. So how do I teach them the core skills they need when they can't afford to pay me? Well, I had to write that book. So there was tears, there was tantrums, and then there's fear, because you think, well, hang on a minute, what happens if I write this book? I spend a year doing it and no one buys it. Oh, then the second fear, the big fear comes in. And again, especially as a dyslexic, because you leave yourself wide open to be criticised. The second fear was, well, hang on, what happens if I write the book, people buy it and they think it's rubbish? Oh, and that's the other fear. But again, I think you have to push through and really focus on those things. But the worst bit, again, as a dyslexic, it's on Audible. Again, as a dyslexic, I like to listen, sometimes struggle with the reading. So And I said to my publisher, yeah, I'm going to put it on Audible. And she said, who's going to narrate it for you? And I said, I have to do it myself because my voice is such a strong part of the brand. Like I write, some of it is written in not Scottish, but I'll say we or this. If you read the book, a lot of people read it with a Scottish accent if they've met me. So it came to narrating. Now this was, I would say, one of the biggest struggles as a dyslexic I've ever had, because my head doesn't follow the words and I go off on a different line and then I miss the obvious words, the, these don't register in my brain. And work with a lot of young entrepreneurs. And one of my young entrepreneurs, Ben Towers, said he's got a friend that's a record producer. So Taylor, again, another young boy in his 20s, he lives part-time in LA and does the music production there, part-time in England. And I caught him between producing the records and he said he would do the audiobook. And bless that boy, he had the patience of a saint, because this is the other thing as a dyslexic, your brain's going a lot faster than the words that come out, and the pace of the audiobook is so slow. The cat sat on the mat, and he would stop me every time I made a mistake. So as a non-dyslexic reading, they could probably read a chapter and then get to the end of the chapter and pause. As a dyslexic, I would struggle sometimes to read a sentence. And if I got to a paragraph, in my head, I'm going, oh, I've got to a paragraph, I've read a paragraph. And then I would make a mistake on the next paragraph. Yeah. But bless him. So Taylor, at the time, we were watching The Crown, the Netflix show, The Crown, season 1. And he would go, Lilibet, darling, you've made a mistake. And I'd go, sorry, Philip, let's do it again. I think that got us through because we had to make light of it. But, it was an absolute nightmare as a dyslexic. But again, I believe that we should push ourselves as far as we can and use the dyslexia as the gift, not the thing that holds us back. And sometimes when you're stuck in your own dyslexic world, it's easy to let it hold you back. But I've tried to really be positive about it as the gift and push it as far as I can to prove that we can achieve despite or because of the gift.
Well, that's a good point. That you've hit on so many wonderful points in what you've just said, and I think we achieve because of our dyslexia, and I know that there's a lot of people who feel they achieve in spite of, so that's something that we're trying to alter as well. When I wrote my book, Fish Don't Climb Trees, I was fine with the writing part. I thought my grammar was pretty reasonable until I gave it to an English teacher came back with red all over it. Which was quite funny. But I've also had this challenge of doing the Audible, and I also wanted to record it in my own voice, but I didn't have the luxury of a studio. It's just very challenging because the funny part is I know what I'm going to say. I've written the wretched thing, right? Yeah. And I still stumble over it.
Oh, so I feel your pain. I know exactly what you mean. And you'd think that because you had written the book, it would be easy, wouldn't it? Because it's your words. But no.
At least you're very self-aware of that. That's something a lot of dyslexics are. They've had to be quite hyper aware of what they're doing because they've struggled with writing and reading and mathematics. And because a lot of people don't recognize what dyslexia really is, you just try to focus in so much on yourself. Whenever I read a book and I noticed I'd read a paragraph or a sentence like you were saying, and I just didn't get it. It was unbelievably frustrating. So you would sit there. There'd be times I'd just stare at the book as if I was trying to burn 2 holes through it. It would be that frustrating.
Do you know what's really interesting? And I've found this, again, I don't know if you guys have found this. I knew at school there was an issue with the retention and the reading. So I can remember my sister was a straight A student, so she is a pharmacist. So she was like A's in chemistry, physics, biology, all that sort of stuff. And we were doing photosynthesis, right? So this is for O level. And again, I would read it and I would remember it for 30 seconds and then it evaporates. So I couldn't remember. And my mum and my sister were like, I don't get it. You've just gone through this. Why can you not remember that? You're not trying hard enough. Why do you not remember this? I don't know. I can't. It just keeps evaporating. But I say that I can't read very well, but I joined a book group. And again, I believe that it's good to keep pushing your boundaries. So I joined book group and all the books that we were reading were fiction. And they would say things like Flowers in the Attic or this book or that book. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've read that. Yeah, I've read that. And it turns out I've actually read a lot of fiction books, and I can remember what happens in the book, but without even seeing the movie. You know, I know that a lot of them I read the book and I've seen the movie, but I can remember it. And I've never heard anybody talk about dyslexia and empathy. So that's the very first time I've ever heard that. And I'm wondering if the fact that I can read a fiction book and remember it is because it's more story based, whereas when it comes to like a textbook, even a business book, please don't tell people, but I really struggle to read business books, and I get sent them all the time. People send me their business books to read and I'm like, oh, and I can read maybe a paragraph or a chapter, whereas a fiction book I can work my way through because I'm following a story. Yeah, I mean, Sue, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that when you're reading a fiction book, it's much easier to create the picture. With a bit of luck, you have got that film going on in your head, and we favor visual conceptualization rather than auditory. But what I think I'm hearing from you is because you have this element of empathy, you probably empathize with someone in the book or with the whole situation, and that's maybe the hook that keeps you in the book. Whereas if you're reading a textbook, there's no emotion that you're going to get out of a textbook.
And I've never thought about that at all. I'd say that one of my favourite books is called One Day, and it's about Emma Morley. It's set on St. Swithin's Day. They made a movie of. I can pretty much remember that book bit by bit. I don't struggle to follow, and I've never thought about it like that before.
And I like reading biographies or autobiographies. And I've often thought, well, I'm just plain nosy, but now you're talking about this, maybe I can empathize with a real person telling their real story, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love a true story. You just feel you're part of somebody's life.
Now, one of the other things you said, I'm going to come back to, because for me, there's three parts to dyslexia. There's this beautiful ability to alter our perception. There's the fact that we don't actually learn the way we're taught in schools. In a nutshell, if the school system is built for the PC computer and we happen to be the Apple Macs, there's bound to be a challenge in some area. But what you were saying was that those little words at and the, that you would leave them out, well, they don't have an image for the meaning. There's 217 of them, and they make up half of what we read. So if you're trying to make a picture of the information that you're reading, and that picture has blanks in it, you're not going to retain the information. So not only do 217 of those little words make up half of what we read, but then you add the concepts. Particularly if you're reading a dry textbook, I'll guarantee you there's about 2/3 of the page that doesn't have an image behind it. And when we get to the bottom of the page, we think, what was that about?
All the time, Sue. I can never remember, literally. And I'm being educated today. I'm loving it. I mean, this is amazing because it's opening a lot of insights for me. So if you've got listeners that are listening to this and they don't know, let's hope that we're opening some doors, some knowledge for them. I mean, to me, knowledge is power, isn't it? And I think that's given me even more knowledge into my gift. I don't even call it a gift. I call it a superpower, darling. It's a superpower.
Exactly. We're creating an elite society. The message that I would like everyone to have is that we're all learning able. I don't believe there are any learning disabilities. I know that when a person struggles, they get that label, but I don't think it's an accurate label. I think it's the fact that we are capable of learning. We just don't learn the way we're taught.
Well, I used to go in and help with the school children, not with the spellings, may I add. I did the numbers, I would help with the times tables. But I could overhear some of the stuff, and I could spot the children that had dyslexia because I could see the signs of like how I learn and how I retained. And it wasn't the fact that I didn't want to learn how to spell. I just couldn't retain the information. But again, a lot of the time it wasn't picked up at even like my children's school. So that's not that long ago. They're only 18 and 19 now. So this is only maybe over the last 10 years. And it was like trying to put the round peg in the square hole. You will sit there until you remember that word. You will sit there until you remember the word. And the child was trying its hardest, but it wasn't retaining the information. And that's where you just hope in education that we don't have to continue to put the round peg in the square hole, that we can teach dyslexic people how to do things differently.
We have a series of strategies that teachers can learn in 2 days. That enables them to reach both the little Apple Macs and the little PCs, and that's what we're trying to get into our sources.
Yeah, that's good.
It's doable. It works. Systems are slow to change.
How has it been being a leader and building relationships and trying to communicate with people who may not understand or have dyslexia themselves, right? Because everybody thinks differently. And it sounds to me you're really good at building relationships.
So I think there's two worlds at the moment to build relationships. You've got real life, the face-to-face, or you meet them, that type of relationship. Then you've got the online virtual relationship. LinkedIn, Twitter, all social media is vile, absolutely vile. There are some horrific, non-understanding people who have no concept of what it means to be dyslexic. They are very critical. And I'll give you an example. I'm a Mac, so I've got the voice software, and you're going to like this. So we call it Fiona, and it reads back in Scottish so that it sounds like me. And that's how I check my work. So I try and check my work as often as I can. Before I'll put a post out on LinkedIn, I'll get Fiona to check it so that it sounds right. I'll find the missing ats, there's it's, so that I can fill in the gaps. And like in my headline, it used to say keynote speaker, sales trainer, or the job title. And I would put something out, and people would actually go out of their way to troll and say, well, I would never want to work with you because you can't even put a sentence together. Why would MD want to work with you? You must be stupid. Your grammar's awful. How would you know anything about business? Blah, 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 blah. And it was awful. And again, you know, these are the things that I would imagine some of your listeners will come across. I don't know the demographic or the age, but people on social media can be vile to people who have got dyslexia or any sort of disability. They're horrible. So what I've done on social media is in my headline, I'll say dyslexic author. So it opens the gate, right? So if somebody doesn't know, and again, this is a difficult thing between a dyslexic and somebody that's got a physical disability. Like, you don't criticize somebody that's got a physical disability, really, but they don't know you've got a hidden disability, do they? So they feel it's within their right to criticize, whereas if it says dyslexic, it's a coping strategy to make people a little bit more aware before they would put something nasty on social media. But I got into a bit of a disagreement a few weeks ago. Somebody put out a post to say, would you ever employ somebody who can't spell? We know that the not spelling is one of the side effects of the gift, isn't it? You know, a lot of people struggle with their spellings. And oh, Sue, Tristan, it was vile. People are going, well, I might give them a job as a tour guide, but I would never give them a job doing administration in an office. People who can't spell are fit. It was just, I went in and I said, I don't know on which planet you think this is acceptable. And the guy said, I'm going to report you to LinkedIn, and I had to delete it and delete the whole thread. But it's horrific. And so that's what I mean. There's two worlds, Tristan. I would say that it would never come up in conversation if I met somebody face to face, because what I've learned is that I'm confident in me and who I am and what I can do and what my strengths are. There's nothing hidden underneath, you know, whereas sometimes, because the area that I struggle in is the written word, I can't always be 100% perfect in that area, and that leaves me open to criticism. So I think you have to grow a thick skin and have a coping strategy that it's okay to say I'm a dyslexic author, or I've got the gift of dyslexia.
And I think a lot of moms who are listening will recognize that their kids are amazing orally. They have an amazing vocabulary. They can talk the hind legs off a donkey, and they have no problem answering exam questions orally, but it is the written part. Our gift doesn't work for us in the 2D world, because the 2D world needs to be seen from one angle. It doesn't benefit from it be seen from different angles. But going back to the 3D world and trying to pull in all these threads, it sounds to me like you're successful because you have this incredible empathy, because you're very good at multitasking, that you are very good at problem solving because you can probably see an issue from all different angles, and you're good at asking for help because you're aware of yourself, and you're very good at oral presentation. Have I missed anything?
No, I mean, one of the things that I do, as well as obviously teaching sales and being an author and doing all the other bits, I speak at events. So I was due to be at the European Commission to speak in Belgium just prior to lockdown, and that was like to 600 people on change and how they can change. And it was really interesting. They were like, can you give us your script? And I'm like, I won't be using a script. You know, I can give you a script if you want, but I won't remember to follow it. So there's no point in doing that. Whereas if I've got photographic, I'm really good at reciting my presentation from the pictures, not from the words. But they're like, can you give us the word? No, I can't give you a script. I'll give you what I'm going to be talking about. And you know, I've worked with companies like Sky, the Discovery Channel, Equifax. So big organizations will pay me a lot of money to go in and talk at their events. They don't know that I'm dyslexic. They don't care that I'm dyslexic. They just know that I'm going to be able to impact. I can make a massive impact with an audience. That is my strength. You know, you can give me a room of 200, 400, 600 people, and they will take away my message. They will listen to what I'm saying. And they don't care whether I'm dyslexic. They don't care. They care about the impact. And I think that's the thing, you know, coming back to focusing on your strengths. Who cares whether I'm dyslexic? You know, I don't care. That's an angle for me. But focus on the things that you're brilliant at. Don't try and pigeonhole me and make you give me a script, because that's not going to work. Let me be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever attempted a TED Talk, but I've applied for a TEDx locally. And for TED and TEDx's, you have to stick to the script. You have to do it word for word. And this is going to be a nightmare for me. I've made it to the second round, so now I've got to do this presentation for the next interview. And I know I'm going to fall on my face because, well, I should never say that. I have a good chance of falling on my face because I don't remember word for word. Like you, I know where I'm going and what I need to say. And if it comes out from the heart, then we're winning. But it's going to be a challenge to remember word for word. And what I did when I first started talking to information sessions and so on, you know how people say, have your cue cards? Cue cards are hopeless because they don't have images on them, right? Oh. And so what I did was we use plasticine clay. We use a 3D medium in the work that we do. So I made my talk. I made where I was going with my talk. And then I had that image in my head. And at least I had a small structure.
That'd be really cool to do if you do get the TED Talk. But just to add to what you were saying, Alison, I find dyslexics, they've had to really work hard to be good at communicating. And there's a difference between spelling something on a piece of paper and genuine communication.
Have you ever met Richard Branson?
No, I haven't. met. I've met a few. I've met Lord Sugar. Some of my clients are the Apprentice winners. Not the Apprentice US, Apprentice UK, and we've got Dragon's Den, which is Shark Tank, and some of them are on Shark's Tank. So I've got a really high profile set of entrepreneurs, but no, I haven't met Richard Branson. But I have done a TEDx and I used my slides. So I was allowed to use the slide and the slides kept the flow. So rather than having to remember it, because you've got to stick to your 18 minutes as well, that was like, I've got to watch my timing.
Oh, that's amazing. Well done. Well, Richard Branson, I mean, can you believe it? He never understood the difference between net and gross profit. Have you heard that story?
Yeah.
And the only time he ever understood it was when somebody described that when you go fishing, the fish that you bring home in the net is what you actually bring home. I can't believe that. I mean, look at the money he's made.
But do you know what's really interesting? There are a lot of dyslexic entrepreneurs. So when people say to me, oh, what's all the secrets, you know, about running a successful business? And as a dyslexic, I go, right, you know what the secret of running a successful business? You got to sell more than you spend. That's it. It's literally, that's all you need to do to have a profitable business. Sell more than you spend, and then you're in profit. I think the common sense and the logic side of things comes quite naturally to dyslexics.
If you have a product that you're passionate about, you're winning because you can speak from passion. And if you have a good oral presentation, then you're winning. It makes sense, doesn't it?
I have a friend named Gary, and he has Asperger's. And the reason why I bring this up is because a couple years ago, he was trying to help me build something in plastic fabrication. And he had to read out the description and all the measurements. And there's a lot of writing. This is what you need to do. This is what's supposed to look like. It was kind of interesting because he showed me what he does in order to save time. He doesn't read the whole thing in perfect detail. He picks out the key words in the sentence. If he believes he's missing anything, he reads a few other words to just kind of connect the dots, and then he knows what he's doing.
I'm laughing a bit because one of the things I struggle with is following a recipe book.
I was just going to say that. That's how I cook.
But I kind of do that a little bit, and then nothing I cook works when I follow the recipe book because I put it in the wrong order.
So listen, I'm mindful of your time, so I'm going to try and wrap this all together. Alison, I just can't thank you enough for joining us because you have such a wonderful mixture of talents that come with this way of thinking and this beautiful gift. And what I find interesting is, yes, you have the empathy and the multitasking and your problem solving and you have this oral presentation and you've got this beautiful way of bringing things together, but you're also working with people who quite often think the way you do, because I think the Fortune 500 says most people who are successful entrepreneurs do have this way of thinking. So it's a fantastic mixture when you think about it.
Well, I think, like, going back to the title of your book, I think fish like to swim with other fish. They don't really like to climb trees, do they? And I think when you find your own people, and again, you may or may not know this, but last month, the Queen actually gave me an MBE on the honours list. So I've been honoured by the Queen for the work that I do for entrepreneurship and business. So I think we fight hard and we try hard and we do our best. And sometimes we feel that we're never going to crack it, that it's too difficult. We take people's criticism on board and it makes us stop. But it does show you that because we have got the gift, that if we use it in the right way and continue in the right way, that people do notice and it does get acknowledged. So my message for the listeners is don't give up, just keep trying. And for the mums of children with dyslexia, if my mum could have understood that I was going to have the amazing life and the amazing results and be able to help the amount of people, she would have stopped telling me to try and learn about photosynthesis, because it was never going to help me in my life.
Well, congratulations. I had no idea. That's amazing. What an achievement.
Oh, thank you. So I literally had to pinch myself. It's amazing. So obviously for COVID reasons, then we're not going to Buckingham Palace. But as soon as we come out, I should be able to go and invest.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic.
I just hope it inspires other dyslexics to not let anything that's happening in their education or in their life, don't let it hold you back. Find your strength and move forward.
And find out how you learn, because everybody knows you can learn, and just find out how you learn and who you are. And that's the fun of working with adults who have dyslexia. I think you might agree, Tristan. It's a whole week of just discovering yourself.
Yeah.
And there's nobody more fascinating than you to you.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Alison, it's a true honor. Thank you so very, very, very much for joining us. And I hope we get to meet in person one day, or maybe even another interview. Thank you.
Love to. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Tristan. Bye.
What a lovely lady. That has to be one of the most inspiring stories that we've heard so far. Leaving school at 16 and having just been awarded an MBE is quite remarkable, and so grateful that she was able to join us. Her website is easy to find. It's www.alisonedgar.com. And if you would like to get in touch with us, our website is www.thewds.org, and our email is info@thewds.org. The next podcast will be with Julie Salisbury, who is the founder of Influence Publishing, and she shares her story with us. A very unlikely story of somebody who is dyslexic making their living as a publisher. So take care, stay well, and here's to the next one. Bye.